Don't be a hoarder. Don't be a hoarder. Don't be a hoarder. It's got potential. It's got potential. I used to think this was funny. Now I don't. So this sound, I've just copied it. I haven't put the actual sound in, but the sound is very common for Instagram and TikTok, not only in knitting and crafting world, but like every other world. I think the most popular one is where there's little glass jars and someone opens a drawer full of glass jars. So I used to think this was funny, especially when it came to crafting stuff, but I don't think that anymore. Like, I can't stand it. I do see myself and every other crafter as a hoarder. Yes, if you're new here, I just say what I think. But I do want to talk about the Reels and the TikTok. I don't have TikTok anymore, but you know, they're basically the same thing. So there's 3 Instagram sounds / Reels that are very common with like hoarding and crafting. So it's, I got this little box of my craft stuff and now I'm so organised. Yes, I'm going to do the voices. And then this lady in the video just throws it into like a messy corner. When I first downloaded TikTok years ago, I remember crying, laughing at this knitter showing her nice pretty yarn shelf and then her messy corner with the Danny DeVito sound from It's Always Sunny, like, I'm the trash man.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring.
And I was just like crying, laughing. The last one is, I don't have a problem, I don't have a problem, I don't have a problem. While panning over all the messy yarn and unorganised stuff and just mess. And she goes, I don't have a problem. And then she goes, I don't have a problem, I don't have a problem. And it just gets angrier and angrier. And it's like, yeah, I feel that. So these kind of videos were so funny. But then I started hearing the same audio with different videos that were all basically the same as the first version. You know, which is basically what Instagram Reels are, just people copying sounds and using different videos. It just came to a point where like this wasn't funny anymore, like not only like the recycling of the sounds, but like the fact that people were just like laughing at hoarding and like hoarding craft stuff. Another thing I noticed with these Reels were that everybody in the yarn craft community has a messy corner. Before you start hating on me, crafting is messy. Like, you do one job, you knit one thing or you sew one thing up, and then the aftermath is just like messy. Having yarn and a craft room is messy. Like, it's a very messy hobby when you think about it. And I have had many messy corners. Like, I'm not ashamed to admit it because it just comes naturally with the crafting. So listen to this episode and keep your messy corner. Like, I don't mind, just you do you. And speaking about hoarding for myself, this is kind of a note to myself and to other crafters who are feeling overwhelmed with their craft rooms or their craft supplies. You're not alone. The first step is, however, admitting that you have a problem. We need to admit that we're hoarders, and I think most crafters struggle with this, or like in the realms of this kind of thing, but are too afraid to say, because most crafters, it's a joke or no one really talks about the seriousness of it. So I guess I'm here to talk about the serious side of knitting. I started feeling like this around Christmas time because, you know, there's pretty presents wrapped in pretty ribbons. I have a box. I used to, but I've organised, but that's later. I have a box of ribbons that I've never used, and I've had this box for like 4 years and I never use ribbon, but I still have ribbon. And I was still thinking with the presents, oh, this would be a nice ribbon. I even saved like this Lush bath bomb wrapping paper because it was lovely. It's like, what am I going to use that for? But I was just like, it's too pretty to throw away. And I do have a knitting journal, so I was like, I could put it in the knitting journal somewhere. Then my mum handed me this paper string like thing. I don't know what, it wasn't ribbon, it wasn't paper, it wasn't string. It was like a mixture of all 3. And she was like, this would be good for your knitting bags. And I said, no, I'm trying not to hoard. And my sister-in-law was like, well done. And it just like, it clicked then that, yeah, like I do have a problem just grabbing stuff that'll come in handy later kind of thing. I've kept that mindset with me and I am going to stick to it. I feel very determined because honestly, the mess, the hoarding, the keeping of things that aren't useful but could be useful later is really, it's just really getting to me. I don't see my knitting and crafts as like a happy thing at the moment. I think of my craft room and all the pointless things inside it, and then And then I start to just hate myself a bit. No, I do. I'm just like, what's wrong with you? I've had days where I've just wanted to go in and throw everything away, like, yes, everything, and just not knit ever again. I tell the truth on this channel. I just say things as they are, as it is. If someone had told me when I first started to knit that I would become a hoarder, I would not have been so excited to knit. Having this much stuff that is never organised, it's just too much, man. It's insane. It's just too much. The main emotions that I'm feeling at the moment are failure. Failure because all those failed projects, all that yarn sitting there. I have only knit 2 things this year so far, and that's how I know I'm not doing well, because every single year before this, by now I would have probably like 4, 5, 6 projects. I would be excited about knitting, but I'm not feeling any of that. I also started a cross-stitch daily journal, which I'm 2 months behind on, but that is not about this. But it kind of is, because when you learn a craft, so say you're a crocheter, you think, oh, I'll do knitting next, or if you're a sewer, you do knitting. So my transition was, I'm a knitter, so I was like, oh, I'll learn to sew next, and it was crochet, and then it was cross stitch. And then I've also tried felting, punch needle punch. All these extra hobbies led to more hoarding. So this video is about knitting, but I've kind of given up crochet now, but I do sew. So I've got a fabric stash and a yarn stash. Another thing about hoarding is you don't want to go and find a certain knitting thing, because where is it? You have to dig through your stash or your shelves to find it, which is stressful. Once you've found it, you don't want to put the things you've just dug through back. You just want to knit. So that leftover mess becomes a messy corner. And then I've written in my notes, but it's quite douchey. So that leftover mess becomes a messy corner, becomes a messy mind. So let's talk about the words surrounding hoarding and yarn and knitting and crochet and all that sort of stuff. Hoarding, stashes, a yarn stash. They're just awful words. Why isn't it called collection? I think because at times it does overwhelm us. It becomes harder to organise. We do get emotionally connected to our craft things. It does get harder to throw things away because of this. And you also think, I will use that in the future. I will use that in the future. And you can have things lined up for years that you've never used, but you'll still have that mindset. The last thing is it's called a yarn stash, because we do just buy craft stuff and yarn. Why are we like this? Why must we have such large yarn stashes and always be buying yarn? It feels good to buy yarn, especially in real life, because yarn shops are pretty and the yarns are squishy. It's also a social thing, especially if you go with another person who knits. But even if you don't, you go in and you talk to the lady who owns it and you end up talking about knitting. So it's a very social thing, buying yarn in real life. And you kind of feel guilty in a yarn shop if you don't buy yarn, because it's such a small little business. So you do feel a bit bad for not buying something. It's retail therapy. Had a bad day? Buy some yarn. We feel we need to buy pretty much anything from a sale. People gifted us yarn, so we can't re-gift it or donate it. Even if we don't like it, we keep it because we've been gifted it. We buy a souvenir yarn, so we'll go somewhere new and we'll get a yarn for that. Like, no plans. I'm in a new place, so I'll buy a new yarn. If it's cheap, we'll buy more. We buy 10 balls for cheap at a show because we are going to make a jumper with it. The yarn is limited edition, so we must get it. The deal was just too good to pass up. If it's a going out of sale, you feel like you're never going to get that yarn again, so you buy more than one ball. This is something that I feel most and possibly all knitters struggle with, whether we like it or not. And you know, this is a safe space, so comment below if you do struggle with this. I do feel like it's kind of hidden in the knitting community that you become a hoarder, or you become overwhelmed, or it's too stressful. It's just, everyone talks about the joy of knitting, but not the stress of knitting. So people say there's no such thing as too much yarn, which obviously, given how this video is going so far, what do you think I think? I think I'm going to disagree with that statement. So for me, I feel stressed and overwhelmed when I think about my yarn stash. I think about the yarn from projects that didn't work, yarn from planned projects I haven't gotten to yet, and it makes me feel like a failure. I organise my craft room a lot, but don't get rid of anything, so it just gets messy and overwhelming again. I forget what yarn I have, so I never use it, or I buy duplicates. I feel like buying duplicates is quite common. So there's some positivity to this video. How to become less of a hoarder, how to not become a hoarder. Basically, how to not hoard so much. I recently did all of these things and they have helped me so much. The first thing is to properly organise your craft room. Do get rid of things. Think to yourself, when was the last time I used this? You might find you haven't used it for years. For me, organising my craft room before would take me like 3, 4, 5 days. This time around it took me half a day, and I've got rid of the most things I've ever gotten rid of, and I feel so good. Compared to every other organisation thing I've had before, I feel like this is the one. Do this same strategy for works in progress. So year-long works in progress, or even ones that you look at and can't stand the sight of it, just pull that yarn out and use it for something else. It'll be hard, but you will feel good at the end of it. Keep on top of organising your craft room. So once a week or once a month, have a little checkup. Label things. So this is a big one that has helped me massively. So we all have those little cute boxes with like darning needles or these cute buttons, a cute little box of stitch markers. So buy a plastic toolbox thing for needle keepers, like the little thing to put on needles, your stitch markers, darning needles, little things that go in these little boxes. Buy one big box for them all to go in. It sounds silly, but believe me, it is like life-changing. No, it really is. It's helped me so much. I never realised before I did it, and I was like, oh my God, I can go to one place and get all my knitting things in one box. I'm not wondering, where's that little box gone? Oh, it's on that shelf. My knitting needles are there, my notions are there, my stitch markers are there. I'm not running about all over the place looking for my things I need for my project. I've got one box and all the stuff I need is in that box. So I can start a new project and just have everything right there. That was quite right there. That was quite aggressive. But you once you do it, you'll see. So another way to become less of a hoarder is to try a stash-free year. So I am doing this, and I am proud to admit I haven't bought any yarn this year. I was going to say so far here, but I haven't bought any yarn this year. I'm going to stick to that as well. I've had a lot of chances to. I've been to 2 yarn shops in one day with my sister-in-law. I've been to a few knit and natters that are in a yarn shop, and the yarn shop gives you discount if you're at the knit and natter, but I still didn't buy yarn, so I'm very proud of myself for that. The first time going into the yarn shop on that first day, the first yarn shop on the first day was really hard, especially because she bought some gorgeous like rainbow yarn, and there was only 2, see, it's happening. There was only 2 skeins of it, so I was like, well, you can get one and I can get one, but I didn't. So how to do a stash-free year. That has gone freezing cold, that's disgusting. Make a record of how much yarn you have. I feel like this is an important one. Get rid of yarn you don't like the look of. Stash-free isn't about you using your entire stash. You can sell some, give some away as presents, donate to your local charity shop. Be brutally honest with yourself. How much of this would you actually use? Unsubscribe from emails and social media involving the yarn you tend to buy most. Get excited about the thought of doing this goal. If you're not excited, just don't bother. Like, don't try, because you need the drive to do it, because it is quite a hard thing, because we are so used to buying yarn. Like, so it's like that stupid, saying, there's 2 hobbies, knitting and collecting yarn, and it's like, I don't like that, but it's very true. You knit and you buy yarn, and they are 2 very separate things. And if you don't look forward to it, you're just going to see it as a burden. You can see it as an adventure, like how fun to pick up a project and not do the actual colours. Call it a goal, not a challenge. It just sounds a little less daunting. Think of where else you can use the money that you're going to spend yarn on. Groceries, bills, a night at the pub. Start a knitting journal. Keep track of your projects and yarn used. You'll feel organised, and it'll be so lovely to look back through. If you do have a bag of 10 balls of yarn, this is a big one for me, because I have 2 bags of big 10 balls of yarn. So if you're not going to use that for a jumper, you could knit a blanket with it, or you could donate as well. But like the big bags, you've obviously thought you're going to use something with it, you like the colours, so it's up to you, get rid of it or use that for a big blanket. Ignore the people that don't believe you'll be able to do it. So I told my mum I was going to do this, and she knit, and she just, the first response was like, that's unrealistic. And I was like, great, just me then. And the longer you do this stash-free mindset, you'll get to know what kind of yarn you like and what kind of yarn you don't like. You'll get to know yourself more as a knitter and like the kind of projects you prefer. I think it's obviously a great thing because you're not wasting money on yarn and you can make your yarn manageable, but I also think it's a great way to learn about yourself a bit more as well. It'll also make your yarn buying decisions in the future a lot better, rather than just buying something for the sake of it. Because you've done this yarn free, you'll have the mindset in your brain already, so your yarn buying decisions will be a lot better when you do go back to buying yarn. And if you don't want to do stash free, because you don't have to, go for your yarn stash every few months or every month and donate some yarn you don't like or won't use. Try a stash free month maybe. Pick a month and decide to go on a yarn buying ban. This is a lot more realistic than if you don't want to do the yarn stash free challenge. This is quite a nice one because it's just kind of like, it gives you a month off basically. Do a yarn in and yarn out every month just to feel organised. I mean, you might be watching this video and be like, I don't want to be organised, Naomi. You know, fair enough. But if you don't want to be organised, then this hopefully is helpful advice. Before you buy yarn, have a look at your stash. You might already have the yarn you want or something similar. So, the roundup. It's okay to get rid of yarn. End of. No, I really hope this episode has helped you. I've been knitting for like 7-8 years. I can never remember and I can never bother to check, but I've been knitting for like quite a while. And it is only the past few months where I've noticed this change in myself and the way I see my stash. I hope something resonated with you in this video, and I hope you can follow this advice and get out of your knitting slump. I feel like being overwhelmed with knitting and hoarding and everything puts you in a slump, like I definitely was in one. I see these traits in a lot of knitters, and like the beginning, the reels and things I used to think were funny, and now I'm just like, are knitters okay? Emotionally, are we all doing okay? So I do want to like say this as well. Having a yarn stash isn't bad. This isn't what this video is about. I'm just here to give advice and share the side effects of knitting. Have as much yarn as you want, as many notions as you want, have a messy corner if you want. Just do what makes you happy in knitting. This podcast is basically, I feel these things, do other knitters too. I want to kind of get a deep dive into knitting and kind of unpick it. If I had seen this episode when I first learnt to knit, I would definitely have thought more about buying yarn and things. Like, I hope it's helpful. I think my biggest thing is the little boxes. Little boxes. That is my thing. That going from tiny little boxes to like one big thing is, it sounds so simple, but it's the biggest change for me that I found with my organising. So now I filmed this video, I've kind of got it off my chest and I've organised my craft room. I feel like I'm going to finally start knitting properly, which is exciting. I can't wait to be excited about knitting again. Because knitting's weird because you knit for years, and if you don't knit for like a few months, you feel so bad about yourself. But like, you don't have to knit all the time, every single day for months. You can have months off if you want. Like, there's no pressure to knit all the time. But then you have that pressure anyway because you should be knitting. It's just like, knitting feels like a constant battle between the joy of knitting and then like everything else. It's like an iceberg. So the knitting's here, and then like hoarding, not being good enough, failure. Like it's an iceberg. Knitting is quite a big thing to take on, I think. But hopefully this video has helped you, and I hope you can follow the advice and kind of get out of your slump if you are in one. So let me know in the comments how you feel about the subject, and are you doing a stash-free year? And I will see you next week for the next episode. And if you've liked this video, please like it and subscribe, and I look forward to chatting to you in the comments about this. I feel like it's a subject that no one wants to talk about, so I'm here to say hoarding isn't cute. And there are ways around that kind of effect that knitting has on you. You can still have a lot of things and not be a hoarder. I have got rid of a lot of things in my craft room, but I still have a lot left. but now I know I'm going to use all those things. I know where everything is, and I labelled everything, which was quite satisfying, and I do feel a lot better. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the knit side.